Hey, John.
Hello, John.
Good afternoon.
You speak up one more time for us that we didn't have good pickup last time.
John, could you say hello again, please?
John Parsons.
Hello?
John Parsons.
There you are.
One more time, John? Parsons?
Hello.
We're blessed with 3 Johns out of 7 people.
And a Jean.
There's never enough.
Yeah, there we go.
John and French.
Yeah, there you go. We could do it that way.
So who we
Just
waiting
Betty,
for?
I think. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. And she said she'd be joining, so should be fine.
Here's some feedback. I think that's you, Mark.
I am, let's go to 0 sound. So I have
There you
music
go.
here.
There you
Okay. Let's try one more thing.
go. What time is the heat time
Hi,
out?
how are you? I didn't even see you get in. Good to see you.
I went to the desk, nobody
What
was there,
time
so I
does the
snuck
heat
up.
time out?
What time is it?
The heat time out?
Oh, it should be 5.
Yeah, the heat goes off at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, so.
That's okay.
definitely-
That's more cool.
Yeah, we could feel it.
If we do enough talking, we won't know.
Yeah,
Is anyone?
There you go.
you know, the second floor has its advantages.
So we're sending it to the roof.
When I was here for 1,000 zoning board meetings in the dead of winter, not so lucky. And I'd say, we're having this meeting. Could we possibly have heat to it? I'm just saying, you know? But they're 2 separate things. Yeah, you either get a meeting or you get heat.
That's it.
Let's give
Yeah.
Patty one
Is
more.
there only one woman on the?
Should we get on the Zoom as well too, or?
No.
I think we're gonna use
As a
this.
member.
No.
Can join.
Wanna try it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it should,
And.
we tested it out, so it should be okay.
Save some jury.
Yeah.
That's
I'm only triple protected, so I don't know.
Nice.
Well, I'm gonna move over so I can see a little bit better.
I'll give Betty one more minute here.
Everybody read their 58 pages?
I actually was impressed. I thought they had done a good job.
I got through about 12, but.
They are broadcast.
Hoping we could wait one more minute, if Betty can join us too.
There's a quorum.
Are we just waiting for one more attendee?
Yeah, we're waiting for one more person, folks, sorry. Am I sounding clearly to you?
You are.
No, sorry, I'm talking to the folks on the Zoom. Sorry.
I want to watch a meeting, but I can't. Hey, Jack. Can you hear me? This is Kevin. Can you hear me, Jack?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what you want to do, guys, is go out of Zoom again. You're in a bad spot. It's not going to get you into this meeting.
Mark, can you text them the phone number?
Yeah. Hey there.
Can you see me? I'm on. I'm gonna get my wife now.
Oh, Jack,
Okay.
now I know who you are. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. You're gonna have to work out here, Betty,
That's fine.
okay? Let me. I'll get you.
Hey. Oh, gosh.
It's a wonderful look.
Sorry about this.
No
My
worries.
goodness.
I'll get you
I'm
a
going to call the
chair.
recalc meeting to order. My name is Mark Doxer. I am a member of the Select Board. Yeah, let's start recording, please. Do you mind starting from here? Great.
Recording in progress.
Everybody please acknowledge that. We don't yet have a chair on the committee. And what I would ask is, would the group be okay if I lead just the first couple of discussion items and then we'll move to an election of a chair? Is that all right?
Yes.
Don't sit there.
Great, thank you. Okay, so thanks. So welcome, everybody. A couple of glitches to get started, but here we are. So this is the inaugural meeting of the recalc group. What we need to do in very short order is elect a chair, just to kind of organize and run the meetings. But what I thought we should do first is make introductions, let everyone introduce themselves, who they are, why they're here, if they have specific ideas or goals, not the detail of the idea, but kind of, I'm thinking about this kind of stuff. That would be really helpful so that everybody in the room knows who everybody else is. I want to make sure after that we introduce Gene Delios, Kevin Baumeler, who are here next to me. You're the owl. You can see Kevin next to me, and Gene's a little further over.
Yeah.
From the town, and they'll introduce themselves and kind of what they do here in the town, and obviously their involvement with us and interest in the topic. We'll go have an election. I thought from that point, I would talk a little bit about open meeting law because we are a committee.
You want me to raise you up?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
And so what I'm going to ask
So
now
just
is,
go.
before we
Sure.
get started, can everyone just mute themselves on that side? So everyone
Just
else
what?
is muted. And then we'll unmute when it's time for each person to speak. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I was just saying, I'll go through kind of just a drop about open meeting law because we are a subcommittee of the subject to open meeting law. Our meetings will be held in public and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we can kind of dig into our business for today, which is mostly in this agenda, kind of getting introduced to one another, what our mission is, talk about some next steps that we want to make sure we accomplish. And then we can talk about when the next meeting should take place. And then I think that would be great for our inaugural meeting, just to kind of get that going that way. So why don't we do welcomes? If you'd like, I'll go first. I actually wrote something down. Sorry, just because I needed to organize myself to what was going on. So my name is Mark Doxer. I'm a member of the select board, and I am the select board's representative to this group. I have a lot of interest in thinking about the community of folks that are in Reading that are age 60 plus in particular. I think that there's kind of this is a tweener group to some extent. We have many folks who are younger, have kids in the schools. We have an older population that's well past having kids in the schools, and there's some very distinct needs from that group. And there's also a group that loosely fits into a category of, let's just call it 60 plus, just so that I don't offend anybody, that may not be as engaged in some of the activities that the community is doing now. And I think that group and those that already either know of the senior center and our activities in town, or may have had more time to consider those activities, are the group of folks that we want to talk to. My interest is in understanding the best practices and experiences in other communities related to senior services and centers, as well as mixed generation centers. I'd like to make sure that we get a lot of public input about the needs and thoughts of the community. We already have some of the information from about 4 years ago. I'm really interested in coming up with a few, I'll call them straw men ideas that might allow people to react to them. So instead of just saying, what do you want? I'd like to be able to say, here are some ideas. What do you think about some of these ideas? And really get some feedback on that. Let's see. Then explore ideas how to move ahead in programs and facilities for buildings, for space, for the short term and for the long term. I'd like to see us engage our legislative delegation in what we're working on here, because I think there's expertise and I think there may be even money. And I'd love to start an implementation at November 22 town meeting in terms of what we'd like to do. So those are my goals. How would you like to do this? Mike, do you want to go next and we'll kind of go around the room?
Sure. My name's Mike Coltman. I'm a member of the rec committee in town, and I've been on the rec committee for 5 or 6 years. I'm not sure how long. I'm definitely in the demographic of the 60 plus and 70 plus. I'm a retired engineer. And I worked for the federal government for 40 years, mostly on railroad research. But I'm very interested in this topic of senior center, aging in place, and a lot of the other aspects of it. I read most of the homework. It was a little bit, I skimmed a little bit in the middle, but I think I got it all. And I found it sort of interesting. It's focused a lot on I would say needs of disadvantaged or unable people or something like that. I think one of the things to think about in a senior center is how to make sure that the age group of 20 to 60 remains active enough so that they can continue to be active at 60 plus. I think that's one of the real challenges. And the other thing that wasn't talked about much in the homework was public-private partnerships and how to work with lots of the private organizations in town and surrounding communities to achieve these goals. Those are my interests.
Fine. John 1?
John O'Neill. I worked for over 40 years in the field of aging. So I certainly have a lot of experience there. I've been on the Council of Aging not only here, but in the city of Cambridge. So I've had that. But my professional in the aging side of it, people have heard about Mystic Valley Elder Services. I was director of Somerville Cambridge Elder Services, the same thing, but for the cities. So we did a whole range of, protective services, in-home services, Meals on Wheels, those kinds of things. So I had a lot of exposure, and I always kind of wondered, why don't most older people go to senior centers? And of course, part of it is the stigma and the denial of aging. So I always have felt very strongly that one of the keys, if we're going to have any success in overcoming that barrier, it lies with the fact that it's not identified as just a senior place. That is the place that you've gone to before you were a senior, engaged in activities, and also as a community building thing. I really think that's an important thing for me, because I think, especially now what's been going on in town for a while, there's been a lot of negative things and people not trusting one another and that kind of a thing. And I think some of that breaks down when people do things together, especially fun things together. So the more sort of activities we can have, the better. Even so, the rec committee would be important, library, schools though. I made a presentation years ago at one of my son's high school class because of, I had been in the Jesuits many years ago, and they were talking about that part of history or whatever. So I made a presentation. I was like, there's a lot of expertise in this community. And when you read somebody's obituaries, I'm somebody who reads the obituaries all the time. See who I know that yes, tremendous backgrounds. And one of the problems that we have in our society is once you become old, you're non-productive, your sense of self-worth is diminished, unlike in some other cultures. So here, the sort of expertise people have, but be it as a mechanic, be it as an engineer, no matter what the background is, that could really enrich, and it will also breaks down for some of the younger people, their stereotypes about older people. And one last thing, I can remember we used to do bring nursing home people to some of the events that we would hold. We would, bring in special transportation and have them come, and then other older people would be, why are those people here? They're old. And this is people who are in the late 80s and 90s talking about those older people, because being old means you're senile, you can't take care of yourself, all these kinds of negative things. And so once again, I think even people with disabilities, I shouldn't say even, people with disabilities have all sorts of, instead of we have the program for people with understanding, disabilities. But a lot of it, how many of us are ever exposed to people with disabilities? I mean, some of us, I live with an adult son with disabilities, so I have that, but a lot of people don't have that kind of exposure and don't know what people, are going through and dealing with. And so once again, the more we can communicate. So that's why a senior center is great. We need to change, even if it was just a senior center, but I don't think we'll ever achieve what we want for a senior center unless we break down the idea of what we have now, the idea of a senior center. It's a place where there's activities for everybody, and you were going there when you were 40s, 50s, and so it's just a natural thing. When you hit 60 and 70, maybe have more time to do more of those things or to volunteer.
Awesome. Sure. Ron?
Sure. Ron Assini, been a resident of Reading for over 24 years. This is my first town meeting.
Town activity, don't call it town meeting.
Activity, well, I mean, anything related with the town, I just, for years, it's, you raise the kids, it's get them off to college and follow your career. So I'm still working, but I'm on the back nine of my career. I'm a tweener, so I have a mom that's like 92 years old, who still drives, still does hairdressing, won't go to the senior center because she feels old. And she lives in Wakefield. I asked, Mom, just go to the senior center. She's staying home. She's watching TV. I said, I just wish there was more activity. She says, no, I don't want to go there. There's no activity for me. So it kind of piqued my interest. I was like, there's got to be something, especially multi-generational. I love this idea of the multi-generational part of it because there really is a bridge. You start them off young and you make it part of the community. And then the age really doesn't matter. It's something there for everyone. And so I'm going to stay here in Reading. My wife and I decided that. And I just want to be a part of the community and help develop something that will be for all. So that's it.
Welcome. Thanks for joining the volunteer ranks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. John Parsons, you go next, please.
Hi, John Parsons. I've been in Reading for close to 50 years. The town meeting member for 20 years. I've served both the town and other activities in church several ways. I've been on the Council on Aging for about 9 years now. And being on that long, it's been clear to me for many years just how much we need to do something to replace the Pleasant Street Center. The facility just, as far as lack of meeting areas, as far as lack of restrooms, as far as just total lack, something has to be done, and that's why I am at this meeting.
Thanks, John. How about John Sasso, please?
Thanks, Mark. So John Sasso, I'm currently a member of the town meeting, at least for the next 2 weeks, until we all have to re-up again. I've been in town over 25 years as well. I currently have a son in the school system, or in an out-of-district placement in the school system. That's another story. I've been on the CPDC many years ago and was involved in some of the master planning work back in 2010 or thereabouts. And so I guess how I got wrapped into this is I wrote a letter. So warning, never do that if you want to stay out of things. But I guess my perspective has been that, there's a lot of, I've read the reports, and there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for us to make improvements. I'd like to bring kind of the fresh ideas of, let's think outside of the box. I'm an engineer by training. But I do work in all sorts of areas, and I work for small companies, so I wear multiple hats in multiple areas. So I kind of always try to see things from different perspectives. So I think looking at ways to bring in folks across the generations is an interesting idea. But I also think there are some very specific senior needs as well. So I think we have to be careful of how we balance that. But in terms of my objectives, I'd just like to see us come up with some ways of meeting the specific issues that we have and make sure we identify them, and then maybe look at, other ways of doing it. There's a lot of resources, there's a lot of expertise, and I think we need to draw upon that and looking at what other communities have done, and maybe even leveraging some of that is a great idea as well. Certainly, Mark, if there's some state-related stuff that we can bring into play, we're always open for that. But I'm not holding my breath for that these days. But I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Betty, could you introduce yourself, please? You got to unmute yourself first. Oh, you're still on mute. Looks like you're still on mute.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. So I want to apologize because it's never happened before. But anyway, thank you for your patience. We moved here in 1969, and I was 27. And we had 3 sons. We had 2 with us. We moved in from Belmont. And right away, I was very interested in participating in Reading. And I was very interested in working with seniors. And I started at 14 working with seniors. Oh, excuse me. That's going. Anyway, oh, dear God.
Don't worry about it, Betty.
Huh?
Don't
That's
worry
all right.
about it.
Anyway, I was on the school committee, and I believed very strongly. Oh, excuse me. I was very interested in the teacher-pupil ratio here in this town, and at the time, it was always voted down. And I believe the best thing that children could get was and pay teachers well and keep the ratio low. And I believe in public schools. My husband does too. He was a teacher for a brief while at Cambridge High in Latin at that time. So I went back to school and got a degree in social work. And then 2 other masters in, it's called pastoral counseling. I'm an interfaith chaplain and retired, but I still participate in that. I love Reading. Where we moved to, no wonder they were very nervous. It was a dead-end street, and the original owners, and in comes me and my husband and these babies. And I'm sure they were wondering what I was going to do. Well, I still am a social activist, but I believed in listening to people. I visited every single one of my neighbors and got to know them. And I wanted to listen to their stories. And I did all that. And I missed each one of them as they passed away. Some of them lived alone. Some of them, didn't have support. And I tried to be there for them, but I couldn't be there all the time. I am a member of the Reading Neighbors Network. I believe in it. I will say I finished my homework, and I see clearly, and I love what was done before. We brought people in who were knowledgeable in this subject. They looked at what we already have, and they wrote very honestly about the things that probably all of us know we need. They made suggestions, but the biggest thing of all for me is that everything that we have needs to be connected. It's like the police going in and not bringing in a social worker if there's a domestic violence case or a domestic abuse. I've helped people with domestic abuse, couple here, who gentleman had Alzheimer's. They needed help, and they got it, through the senior center. The nurse and the social worker came, and they were wonderful. But people need to know we must become more available. People, and you said somebody, I'm sorry, someone spoke up about the stigma. And I have to say, my mother-in-law died at 94, and she was still volunteering at the senior center. She was never a member of the senior center. And my mother loved it, so. But we must make things more accessible. I will say that I think what we were given as seniors, and, I worked a long time, I'm now retired, but that is a very poor excuse to hand over to seniors, the senior center, who worked hard in this town, who paid taxes in this town. I think we have probably the poorest senior center I have ever seen. And, what I'm seeing happening in this town is that everybody's moving in, paying for luxury condos. Where's low-income housing? Where's senior housing? We moved into a condo that had all ages, and I wanted that. But anyway, thank you. I'm on this. I'm happy to be here. I don't want to use all our time. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. So thanks, everybody. So little did you know it, but those were your campaign speeches in running for chair. Before we do that, maybe the other folks in the room would introduce themselves. So Jane, Kevin, Amy, if you guys could introduce yourselves, that would be great, please.
Sure, I can go. Hi, everybody. I'm Jean Delios. I'm the assistant town manager I've been with Reading now for 12 years. And next year I will be entering my 40th year of working in local government. So I've
Great.
worked for a number of cities and towns. Thank you. I've worked for cities, I've worked for towns, I've worked for the MBTA. And I've seen some changes in all that time. And I'm very excited to be here and to be part of this. I was very pleased to be part of the group that initiated the needs assessment study that we brought in UMass. Some of you might remember, I think John Parsons, you were on the Council on Aging when we talked about this. And it wasn't a lot of money to bring them in and get those recommendations. And so that's been a great base for understanding where we're at and how we compare to our peer communities. So it's exciting that we're here. Thank you to Mark for spearheading and bringing us all together. I'm very happy to be part of any kind of work and roll up my sleeves and get to work. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. I'm Kevin Baumeler, and I am currently the Community Services Director here in Reading. I've been in town for about 7 years now. Can you believe that, Jane? 5 years first as the Veteran Services Officer, and then my timing was impeccable, and I took on Community Services Director in March of 2020. So again, I work with, I have two great teams over in the Recreation Department and here in Human and Elder Services. They've done a fantastic job all during the pandemic. We opened up the Pleasant Street Center. That's just the note I wanted to make. We don't call it a senior center. It was rebranded several years ago, and we call it the Pleasant Street Center. But again, we opened up in June of this year, and we managed to keep people safe, which has been a priority since day one. And we didn't know what to expect when we opened up, but I think I've said before, if you build it or you have it, they will come. And basically all of our programs right now are maxed out, and the staff does an incredible job with what we have to work with. So I'm excited to be able to be part of helping Reading develop something that's best for the community, whether it's a new Pleasant Street Center, a multi-generational community center. Again, I'm looking forward to helping the town best meet its needs. So thank you all for volunteering, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Amy O'Brien. I'm the administrator for Elder and Human Services in Reading. I am fairly new. I just passed the 6-month mark and I am a lifelong Reading resident, and I've been in the human services field for almost 20 years. I am really excited to be here and excited to be part of what the future holds. And thank you to Mark and to everyone for getting this group started. So I will keep it short.
Sweet, awesome. So we kind of have said hello. Are there people that, so let's talk about what we want to do is create a chair, a vice chair, and I think a secretary. And let's talk a little bit about what that means. So the chair and the vice chair, the vice chair is very much supportive of the chair and taking the place of the chair in case the chair can't make a meeting. The chair's responsibilities are largely to, number one, call the meetings, make sure that we work through minutes, set the agenda. And of course, everyone has input to the agenda, but the chair is the person that kind of has to take the central responsibility for that. Other than that, we are, the 7 members are peers in terms of what goes on, and whether you're chair or vice chair or not, we're all peers. That's how that works. So it's largely administrative in terms of these other roles in terms of what happens. That said, we need it because we need someone who kind of controls the flow of the agenda, make sure that things are going to happen. And we've got to figure out how we're going to deal with things like minutes as well. And thank you, Gene, for typing feverishly in the background today. We need to figure out how we're going to want to deal with that going forward. And then kind of there are a few other responsibilities that the chair gets in terms of occasionally appointing people if that's what the group wants it to do. And that's kind of it. So with that, are there people that would like to either be the chair or nominate others for chair?
I would nominate John, who's got a background in this area.
I'll second the nomination.
Good.
Any other candidates? All right, so what we should do is we should take a vote to close nominations. And so because we're hybrid, we're going to do everything by roll call, meaning that I'm going to call everybody's name. And then once there's a chair, the chair is going to enjoy that responsibility going forward. So can someone please make a motion to close nominations?
I move that we close nominations.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Ron, thanks for the second. Okay, so now, so this is a motion to close the nominations. I'll take a roll call vote. I'll start with the folks I can see on the screen. So Betty?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's a vote of yes or no to close the nominations.
Oh, yes.
John Sasso?
Yes.
John Parsons? I need you to say, yep, thank you. Ron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John O'Neill?
Yes.
And Mark, yes. Okay, so the nominations are closed. So now we need a motion to elect John O'Neill as chair. And someone can just say so moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Betty. Okay, now we are going to take a vote to approve John O'Neill as chair. And assuming that he is voted in, he then gets to take over the meeting and you can handle the vice chair, secretary kinds of issues in terms of getting those elected as well. So let's take a vote now on electing John as the chair. John O'Neill is the chair of the group. As I see you on the screen, Betty?
Yes.
John Sasso?
Yes.
John Parsons?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mark, yes. So we have a unanimous vote. John, you are the chair. Meeting.
John.
Okay, well, first, thank you all for the support, I guess. That's not what I came here looking for. Happen. All right, so we'll open nominations for the vice chair. Do I hear any nominations? Vice chair.
I'd like to recommend John Sasso.
John, would you accept?
I mean, I'm going to do my best to be at all the meetings that I can be. But sure, if it's, yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Is there a second to that nomination?
I'll second it.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations.
So moved.
It's been moved, and do I hear a second?
Seconded. Yeah.
Second, and then we'll have the roll call. Okay, I don't have the order, so is there a particular order that you have?
Oh, whatever you want. You're the chair.
So, Betty, why don't you go
Yes.
first?
Yes.
John Sasso?
Yes.
And John Parsons?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
Mike Coltman says yes.
okay.
Mark Saxon says yes.
One.
Okay, so nominations been closed. Now we'll vote for John Sasso for the vice chair. And Betty?
So moved.
No, it's already been moved, but it's your vote.
Yes. I'm sorry.
John? Sasso?
Yes.
John Parsons?
Yes.
Ron Assini? Yes.
Mike Coltman, yes.
Mark Doxey, yes.
And John O'Neill, yes.
Congratulations, folks.
Okay, so congratulations, John.
Yes. Congrats.
Now, it says secretary. Is there really, is the secretary going to have to actually take minutes? I think people should know before we nominate. They don't, but is this going to be the case here?
So we have to kind of figure that out,
Okay.
how to do it. So right now, Jean has offered to take the notes for today.
Okay.
And so off time, so some groups, depending, are able to get the resources to do that. Resources are pretty tight right now in terms of town activities. So I guess the preference would be if the group would elect a secretary and the secretary would be willing to do the notes into the future, that would be preferred. If not, then we can go and speak with the town about resources. They're tight, just to be honest.
Okay.
Can I get a clarification? So when someone takes the notes, where are the notes published?
You want me to answer?
Yes.
Okay, so what would happen is they would come as a draft, as meeting minutes that would be sent to all the board members. We'd make any changes to them, we'd vote for them, and once that's done, they're actually posted with the clerk.
Okay.
Those become official minutes.
And just to be clear, the minutes they're not word for word.
Correct, it's not a transcript.
It's just notes of what happened.
Well, that's important. It's the most
Yeah.
important. The biggest thing is, all right, what items were discussed and then what motions were made? Those are the things you have to be clear first.
Right.
Yeah, and a third piece, if there is disagreement, then to share what the different opinions were.
Right.
And for, because I've seen both ways, do you have to state who made the motion?
That's usually how it's done, yes.
Okay.
Who made the motion, who seconded it, and then a vote.
All right.
And then again, if you have different points of view, then it would say, John O'Neill said this,
Yeah.
Mark Doxter said that.
All right, so we'll open nominations for secretary.
You know, I'll take a stab at this. I do notes all day long, so.
I will nominate Ron.
Okay.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much. Well,
Good.
I have to take her typing lesson.
You're in a good spot.
so do I have a, I need a
I would
motion as
nominate
well as a
Ron.
second, all right.
Yeah, should.
All right. Do I hear a second nomination?
Seconded. Oh,
And then,
a second. Oh,
okay, are there any other
Oh.
nominees? Any other nominations, secretary? Seeing none, okay, we'll declare.
I moved it to be closed.
Those nominations, I'll second that.
Mike moved that the nominations be closed, and so now we'll have a roll call vote on closing the nominations. Ron,
Rossini, yes.
Mike,
Mike Coltman, yes.
Betty,
yes.
John Sasso,
Yes.
John Parsons.
Yes.
All right.
Mark
And
Doxter, yes, and you.
And John O'Neill, yes. Okay, so now we'll move right to the roll call vote on the nomination of Ron for the secretary. And, all right, Betty,
Yes.
John Sasso,
Yes.
John Parsons,
Yes.
okay, Ron,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes,
and John O'Neill, yes. So it's unanimous.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right, and you wanted to go into the open meeting law?
I don't want to go into it, but let's talk about it. So just a quick background for everybody. So because we are a committee established by the board, we are subject to what's called the open meeting law, which is a state regulation that basically says we should be doing everything in open meetings. That's the essence of what's going on. What that means specifically is we're a group of 7. So you cannot speak with a quorum of the group, where a quorum is 4 people. So you could speak about a topic with up to 2 other people, so a total of 3, and that's fine. You cannot have a serial communication. In other words, you can't talk to 2 other people, and that's 3, and then go and say, okay, I'm going to talk to somebody else about what the 3 of us talked about. And you can't gather as a group of 4 or more people unless it is a posted public meeting. Posted public meeting means that 48 hours notice has been given to the town clerk to post it publicly so that members of the public can attend if they want to. either in person or in Zoom if we're going to be in hybrid format. So those are kind of the key pieces of open meeting law. So if you see something that's coming around and you start sending notes to people saying, I don't agree with that, that's a no-no.
So I think that's the important clarification. So it's emails and phone, like a group phone thing as well with.
Yeah, and sitting down together, obviously. Yeah, it is all the same way. So usually the outbound communications is more, it can be a document saying, this is in the agenda, it's going to be discussed, but don't send me feedback on it. The things you can discuss as a group are schedule and schedule. That's pretty much it.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you, Mark. So we'll move on to review of the scope of work.
Actually, you want to do a review of mission?
Oh, review of mission, sorry, yes. And the mission was, well, we got the document. I don't know if everybody had a chance to see it, the actual formal scope of work. And rather than go through it step by step, first of all, ask people if they have any questions about the scope of work as presented. I would have one, so I'll step aside for as the chair. Oh,
I'm going to share it on the screen.
okay. Okay, thank you.
So, John, could I offer a couple of comments?
Yes.
Thanks. So, by way of just a quick background, so Gene, Kevin, and I have gotten together probably 3 times, roughly.
Sounds about right.
So there has been, let me go back even further. So I am the select board liaison to the Council on Aging. As I attend the Council on Aging meetings, there is a lot of discussion about the needs of the senior community and those 60 plus, and thinking about, okay, how do we make progress? So obviously the council is very involved in making sure safety is happening, supporting what's going on with elder services. And they've also expressed a very strong desire for kind of what's next. How else can we better support the community? And there's a lot of discussion about what the council itself can do, and it has some budgets that it can use to do that. Obviously, through human and elder services, there are ways to do that also. In addition, at annual town meeting of a year ago, there was a vote taken, and $40,000 was appropriated for the purpose of a senior community center planning under Gene's department, and having a discussion of what should be done with that money to support our goals. The 3 of us sat down, Gene, Kevin, myself, and talked about how could we move this ahead more quickly, more actively. Let's go. Let's get it done. And we talked about the idea of, well, why don't we form a committee that would report into the select board that would help guide the select board in terms of what activities they should sponsor, they should push, and bring forward to town meeting so that money can be allocated. Without money, very hard to do many things, and without town meeting, no money is spent. Town meeting approves all the expenditures that are going to take place. So we put together an outline for this. We brought it to the select board. The select board agreed to the formation of the committee. That's this document. And there are some very specific things in terms of what the charge is. And there's that in the first paragraph, the second sentence, charge of recalculus to explore the current and future needs of the community, initiate planning for a potential new senior/community center in town focused on residents age 60 plus and possibly other members of the community. We also wanted to put some specific deliverables in terms of what would go on here. So one of those deliverables is, and we can talk later about what has to fit, but one deliverable is to be ready for April town meeting with a progress report in terms of what activities have been undertaken, kind of the direction that things are moving in, report back on outreach and other activities that have taken place so that town meeting is aware, they can offer their input into the process and what's going on, because after all, whatever recommendations are made, they're going to need to approve if it involves dollars to be expended. And then to be able to come back to the next schedule a town meeting, which would be November of 2022, ideally with a recommendation on, let's do X. X could be some kind of could be plans if it relates to a building, doing our architectural plans, other activities. It could be specific other uses for funds that are being recommended that would support the goals of this group. But to be able to do that for November town meeting. So that's kind of what's envisioned here. I think as a board member, and I'm the member of the select board that's elected to be here, is to make sure that this group comes back to the select board in March, so in advance of April town meeting, with thoughts on what to do, to then bring that recommendation and present it to the town meeting in April. And then the goal from there would be, as this committee continues to do its work, the other groups in town that would be involved, certainly select board, recreation, council on aging, and I'm thinking others too. You brought up, John, schools, and library, and rec. Yeah, so rec definitely, but that kind of broader constituency, and to engage more of the community in this process, because to spend a substantial amount of money requires strong community support. So our mission, in a sense, I think, is to kind of figure out what makes sense by gathering input, figuring out what the best practices are, and then to start to grow this constituency of folks that will support it through town meeting and get it implemented. Sorry, that was a little bit longer than I intended.
Question is, the consultant has to be hired like yesterday kind of thing. I mean, given this is a very aggressive timeline.
Exactly.
We're talking about March, and here we are, December, and maybe we'll be able to get another meeting in December, but that's going to probably be difficult. So we're already January. That would be my first thought. But what's the ideas? You must already have talked about the ideas of the process for a consultant, and there is the way the town has to go about procuring the services of the consultant. So maybe you could share that with everybody, so we would.
So that's very specifically the next item on the agenda, is to do exactly that. And talk about it, what's required, when and how. And I think you're spot on, and probably Gene's gonna be the most familiar, and Kevin second most familiar with kind of what has to happen to get that to take place.
Okay, so Gene, you want to enlighten the rest of us?
Okay, I'll stop and give my fingers a rest.
Yeah.
So the scope of work that we drafted is for a planning and community engagement effort. When we think about this big idea of what is the next iteration of the Pleasant Street Center, we haven't had a lot of opportunity in the community to get ideas, to bring people together to talk about this. And so the one thing we always learn in planning is that you really have to reach out and reach deep into the community. So that whatever plan you're proposing or going forward with is reflective of what the community's going to be supportive of. And so, planner, I thought, let's make sure we have this small amount of money, and it really isn't enough to do a feasibility study. That would be the next step. But if we can use this small amount of money wisely to bring people together, we just did this with some zoning work. We're going to town meeting in April for modifications to the zoning bylaw on some changes for our downtown smart growth district. That CPDC opened that last Monday. So that was front loaded with a community engagement effort that took us from August to the end of November. Multiple public forums, we did focus groups, we did a survey, we sent it out, I know Mark got it. We sent a postcard out to everybody in Reading, and we linked that survey as well as what we're doing with the parking subcommittee, the parking task force. And so that's the kind of thing that I think would work well here as well, where we can hear from the residents, the stakeholders, all the boards that you talked about that are actively involved in this kind of thing, rec and schools, and anybody that we can pull together and pull into this to make sure we're hearing all the voices before a recommendation is formed to go to the next step. So what you have before you is an outline, and it's really based on a number of things, as I said, focus group survey, public forums, all the kind of things that we are used to doing to get ideas and to get the dialogue going. And then we would synthesize all that feedback and really get the pulse of the community on where people are at with this.
If you've thought about how to build on the study that was done, because in my experience, that was a lot of good information. And it's recent enough that it should be still relevant, and it gives a lot of good ideas as far as what the problems are. You know, the physical layout here, transportation, mental health. I mean, it's really fairly comprehensive. So how is that going to be incorporated, or how do you foresee that?
Yep, that's a good question. Thank you. So the document that we have on file that everyone read is really a needs assessment. So it's the first step in what are some of the needs that we need with the Pleasant Street Center. Now I think we're opening up the conversation a little bit wider to say, okay, let's think, I think somebody said, let's think outside of the box. Should it be here? Should it be somewhere else? Should it be serving a broader base of users? Should we be thinking bigger? And what are some of the other examples from other communities? And I think one of the pieces we had on the website was, I call it a peer communities summary. So you got to see some of our peer communities and what they were doing and what did it cost, how many square feet, how long did it take, where are they at. So there's lots of great examples out there. But I think this particular consultant's scope would be focusing on community engagement with maybe just the idea that we would all be starting this big question together and making sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves without being very, very careful to engage the community as much as possible. And those survey tools that we have today with the technology that we have, it's an excellent way to get feedback. And this consultant will draft that survey so that, you know, we're not pointing it in any way. It's a professional person to come in. This is all they do. They do the survey, they synthesize the results, they lead the community engagement efforts and the Zooms and the public forums. It's a little tricky with, you know, Zoom or whatever. It's not the same as in person, but I think it gets us a lot of valuable data. We found that with the 40-yard zoning exercise that it was really a great, we've got 1,000 responses to our survey. So that could really inform going forward the next step.
So would one of the first steps of this consultant be to sort of take that needs assessment and other things and form a presentation for focus groups? These are all the things that are on the table, and this is what we need feedback on. So sort of digest all, you know, the 60 pages and other things that we know, and say, this is what we want to find out about?
Yes and no. I think that needs assessment gets us to a starting point of saying, we've outlived the Pleasant Street Center. We've outgrown it.
Right.
It's likely of 10 people living in a 2-bedroom house. You've outgrown it. So.
For the galley kitchen.
Exactly. So you've outgrown it. It's clear, black and white in the needs assessment. Everyone does a great job here and they make it work. Just like you could if you had a bunch of kids in a small I grew up in a house, we had 1 bathroom. It was the norm. So you can you can do it.
1 car.
And at the end, if the community says, I know you've outgrown the Pleasant Street Center, but, you know, make it work, then that's okay. But I think what we're saying is we take our needs assessment and we honestly look in the mirror and say, we're at a crossroads here and we need to think about what the next step is. It doesn't necessarily mean Pleasant Street Center renovated, but maybe that's one option. But I don't even think we're really at that point. I think we want to think about what do people want in this community? What are they really interested in? Just like we all went around and said what we were interested in. Collectively, what are all those voices saying they really want Reading to have? Like, what is the goal? Do we want to have something like in the town of Natick where it's a intergenerational community center? That's really the question. Is that what you could support? And understanding if you wanted to go that route, this is the price tag.
Right.
Or maybe that's a later question.
Yeah,
But to get us the results that we're looking for, are we going in the right direction thinking, okay, maybe the Pleasant Street Center, fix it up a little, maybe this and that, maybe that's good enough? Or do we want to go with something bigger?
Mhm.
And that's what the question we really are asking ourselves. And with the help of this consultant, we can get all that feedback and understand what is the consensus of the community and how do we best go forward. And then I think we go to, okay, here we are, we heard, and everybody, the biggest voice, the consensus is that we want to this. And then we go to that step and go to the next level
okay.
and say, okay, now we got to think about, now that we know what we want, how do we get there?
You just wonder if folks even wonder what they even know that they can get as well too.
Mhm.
Right? Do they even know it's available in other communities?
Yep.
With-
And that's where the consultant will be so helpful. How do we find this out? How do we pull this out of people?
And how do we tell that to the community? So they know what they're asking, what they're looking for as well too.
And I support exactly what you're saying, Ron. I think that we can certainly, ask people more, what do you need, what do you want? I think that one of the things that this group could do is I guess two things. One is take to heart the charge, which is senior/community center in terms of exploration, number one. But number two, to really start thinking about kind of what are some ideas/options that are out there that we might think about that people could give feedback on. So not just, here are the needs. We've got a pretty good list. I'm sure we'll add more. But where do you channel that? What are some ideas in terms of how you might channel that? I think that would be really helpful in really understanding what it is that the community would be willing to support.
Like, can you stop sharing the screen just so I can see if any of the other people, other members have some questions or comments? But you
I'd
just
like,
okay, Betty.
I'd like to have some key questions, have them submitted to a source to find out how everyone over the age of a certain age, all right, feels.
Address, do we have an outreach coordinator, has certain programs?
So as a matter of fact, one of the things, I'll be giving my budget presentation tomorrow night, and I'm asking for more hours for the Elder Human Services. So that is something that we continue to push for and advocate for to get the staffing levels up. It's a great staff here, and it's very exciting to see how things have grown in that way. And so even though we don't have the 50% increase in staffing, that might be nice. It's been an increase, and it's the quality of staffing, I think, is fantastic. So I know that was another key aspect of the report, the physical and then the staffing. Those are the two that jump out.
But the outreach
I
was
was gonna,
right, John? That was identified in the report, and so no change there?
We do have a senior outreach worker,
Well, we have a senior caseworker.
caseworker.
The outreach is really
we have a nurse.
split between three people. The outreach senior caseworker.
I have the report.
Nurse advocate, and our elder and human services administrator. And they're doing outreach all day long.
Right.
Not specifically their job, but the phones ring off the hook, and they do a lot of home visits.
Right.
Pleasantries includes an awful lot of information on how to contact and take advantage of different services. One other thing we just recently did from the study is we moved the administrator, who used to be Jane Burns, who used to have an
Yes.
office in the hall. We recently reclaimed some space right behind us here and moved Amy O'Brien over. So she is here full time, which is the way it should be.
So thank you for that. I mean, I looked at the report and there's like 4 or 5, I think, major areas identified: communications, transportation, affordability,
Housing.
services, staff, and space. And one of the things that I look at this, and I looked at some of the report information, and I thought we might have an opportunity in this committee to have an impact is, well, obviously having gone through the process of capital planning and building new buildings and doing all this work, it doesn't happen overnight. There's a long process, and as Jean has said, we need to really establish buy-in with all the stakeholders to make something like that happen. I actually think there's a huge opportunity in all of this for some short-term, real important things that we can do to improve the situation in a couple of these areas, maybe not all of them, but some of the areas that also could serve to provide some rationale and support to the larger goal of where we want to be long-term. And one of those items was the subject of a letter I did write to the select board about getting a hold of some commercial space, even in the short term, as an interim, to show the benefit and value and see what sort of response we could get from the community. So I really would like to think that, and this may not be a consultant job, but I think that this group has an opportunity to take some of these areas and really look at them. Again, the report that was done, I think, was well done. I certainly also think there is opportunity for the consultant to, in areas where we still have some questions that we could ask, a little bit more probing questions on some of these areas to get better guidance. Again, not to say we can't continue to look at longer term ideas of space, but I would like to see us think about doing that in the interim. So that's just a suggestion I'd like to offer to the group is, if we could organize even a couple of us together to look at each of these and come up with some brainstorm ideas about what we could do. I think there's opportunity, and I think that the dollars and cents we would be talking for some of these may not be as significant and may be a little easier to move through with the concept of proof of concept. Hey, this is something, if we do, we can get some feedback really quickly, like within 6 months or a year, of whether this is really a program or an opportunity that the folks in the community would be interested in. So I'll stop there, but I think that's really the piece that I would like to see us be able to execute on and potentially get some support from the consultant to help us guide those efforts.
Anyone? Okay, Betty, sure.
John, would you like to go before me?
No, go ahead first.
Okay. One of the biggest issues that I have found with aging, and there's all different ages, but there are people, a large number who live alone in Reading and feel very isolated. Along with that comes the mental health issues of aging. There's a very high, not in Reading, but I was part of a study. There's a large suicide number of suicides with aging people who live alone, whose families are not near them or not in contact with them. I offered to do, I volunteered my time, I didn't want to get paid, to run a workshop for people who are coming in and depressed. And I was told by one of the staff, very nice, they're all so nice at the Pleasant Street Center, and she said, we don't have room to put you. And I said, do many people come in and say they're feeling depressed or feeling? She said, oh, many. She said, most of the people who come in. And I said, well, I feel I have done this professionally for years. She says, we have no room to put you. And then I said, well, what do you do with them? She says, well, we send them outside Reading. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm depressed, if they're depressed, they're not going to go outside of Reading. And I would love to see more done with that, even if we have to, as you just said, John, about using commercial space. I can tell you for a fact that there are many, many seniors in this town who are depressed and isolated and may act on ending their life. That's a reality. No one likes to hear that, but it's true.
Highest rate of suicides in the country are older, living alone. John Parsons?
I probably have a certain amount of tunnel vision on this. Yeah, there are studies going back much further than the 5-year one that's been mentioned that show at least 10 years ago, consultants saying, you need a new building, you need a new building. And as I say, I probably got real tunnel vision on that. As far as some of these surveys to people throughout the town, the only people that really know what the situation is are the people that go to the senior center or the Pleasant Street Center. I don't know why I said that. And there are a ton of seniors who would take some of these surveys who, again, have no idea what the situation is like down there. I just run a short story by you that's got somewhat nothing to do with this, but they're doing the Green Line out to Medford and Somerville. I think they're opening in a week or two. I can remember before I graduated high school in 1962, my father, who was an engineer for the state, came home and said, I've been asked to do some preliminary studies on rerouting some of the roads because the Green Line's going out to Medford. At least 60 years later, it's finally done. I hope this isn't one of these things that's going to take 60 years to get done. That's it.
Okay.
Right.
I don't want to be like the Commonwealth of Massachusetts taking out.
I still don't think I'm clear as far as how we get to the consultant, because that's how quickly that can be accomplished.
And do we
What?
have one that we know we've worked with in the past?
Yes, yeah, like I said, we've just been working with our partners at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I don't know if they do this kind of work, but they've done community outreach for us. There are other professional consultants that have been involved in other centers. We've worked around with the different communities that have kind of been through the process, and they've used planning consultants to do this kind of thing. So I'm fairly confident that we could find a pool of interested consultants. It does have to go through the procurement process, which is why I wanted to get this before the committee on their first night, so that if the scope of work is okay, and we don't have to decide tonight, but the sooner it gets decided, the sooner I can work with my co-workers at Town Hall to get this invitation for bids out into the street and get the process moving.
I know we still have to talk about goals, but I think it's important that we hit this on, right away. So the scope of work, let's talk about that for a moment to make sure, people are on board with what's written here, but also, are there anything that you really feel like it's missing, or that's in there? Probably more might be missing, but realizing we have this, relatively small pot of money. But let's take a good look at this. And are there other things that people would like to see in there or have a question about anything? This is the time to nail this down.
Yeah, John, let me just say, I think one of the questions, again, I have from my perspective is, I'm going to focus for the moment on the short-term things. I really do think that there's opportunities to get some things done, well before we might ever see a new building or a new new community center, or whatever one wants to call it. But the problem is, I don't know, without having actually sat down and maybe worked through some of the ideas and concepts, what other questions we would want to ask and what other information would help us make better decisions about that. As far as the larger question of, building some community support for a bigger project in the end, I guess, based on what's been put forth, I would ask the question, well, what else do we need to know? I mean, there's a lot of really good information in here that was done, again, maybe 5 years ago, but is still, I would suspect, somewhat relevant. What else do you need to know from that the community? Or is it just an exercise to build more support? Because I mean, that's a different activity than necessarily sending a survey out to somebody and saying, we want input. So I guess I'm still struggling with that, you know, if there's specific questions we need to help us make some shorter term decisions to actually start to tick some of these issues off, I certainly think that's something that would be of value. But I'm not ready. I'm not sure if anybody else is, but I'm not ready to give those questions because I haven't spent the time going through this, and we as a group haven't brainstormed those ideas. If it's questions about a larger project, then I would leave that to the professionals to say, okay, you've looked at the report. Well, what else do you need to know? Because I've read the report, and I think everybody's looking at it saying, we know this isn't the building that's going to do the services and the piece that we want in the long term. So what else do we need to know in terms of making those decisions and getting that information? I think they're two different sets of questions, and I think they're both important. I just don't know what they are at the moment.
Right. So let me suggest that we're talking about a parallel process here. One is a concrete one as far as the consultant. So I really want to knock that off. The second is what you're suggesting, John, you know, interim steps, more broader, you know, thinking outside the box sort of thing. But I think until we have the consultant, because for us to be able to get the information, you know, and I think a consultant would be helpful for us. But Mike, you were gonna say, you had something to say?
Yeah, I had thought that the consultant was going to help us sort through a lot of the issues that you're bringing up, John, about what has to take place in this building, what are the short-term things that could take place in, you know, other places or other things or schools, and, you know, suicide treatment and public health kinds of stuff needs to get addressed appropriately. And clearly from the report and my experience with this building is not big enough to do all the things that we would like to do in this building. That said, you can't have a new building in 6 months or a year or anything like that. So what are the alternatives? What can you do? The library was down by Market Basket for a year. There's vacant buildings all over Reading, commercial space that could be used for all sorts of things. But we need a consultant to help us sort out what appropriate activities could take place in other places versus here, what could be done by private-public partnerships, what all the other things. Getting everybody in this building, you know, Amy and all the staff here should help sort of brainstorm all that stuff of how are you going to do all these services, and I think the consultant should help us sort out. So that what you're looking for, Mark?
I think we have an opportunity to think big first, and then talk about, okay, what can we do now and how do we get there? And I think it would behoove us to make sure we're thinking, I'm going to call it big enough. And I don't mean, let's get as big as we possibly can. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we need to understand what's going on, where we want to head, kind of, let's call it point G from A. And then we can talk about what's in between A and G and how to get there. I want to be careful that we don't kind of come back and say, let's just do B, and then get into John's Medford project or continue John's Medford project. I don't think that's what we want to do either. So I think that the consultant, they're not, what they can do is help us with the data gathering. If we guide them as to what we're looking for, they can help us kind of bring that stuff back and bring it forward, as opposed to kind of being a paid consultant who says, I know everything there is about the needs of people 60 plus, and I can give you all the answers. I don't think that's what we're looking for. I don't think necessarily there's the right person to do that. But there are lots of different things that we can look at, including community input is a gigantic one. There are resources at the state level that we haven't tapped that we should. Our local legislators. I'm going to give you an example. When we decided to buy the so-called Lot 5 in the town forest, we talked to our legislators and they came back and said, oh, we can probably get some money to help support that activity for purchase or working on the trails. And they put into the budget, which I guess the Senate and House have both passed, it's on the governor's desk, is $150,000 to support those efforts, which is awesome. There is a Mass Association of Councils on Aging.
I know their director very well.
Awesome. I want to make sure that this group is able to kind of gather more and different kinds of input so we can really kind of say, look, here are our goals and here's a path, right? Here's tomorrow, next year, 3 years. That would, to me, that would be an exceptional outcome. And you know, it gets the Medford station done in less than 60 years.
Okay, Betty?
I just would like to ask a question. Many of you may know the answer, but I've been wondering why we have two empty buildings, both Walgreens, that are in very good, the position up in the center is very, very centralized. The answer I received at an RNN meeting was the town had made an offer and Walgreens shot them down because it wasn't high enough. So somebody was thinking, as John mentioned, and I have to say, John, I agree with you. Right now, there are things that we can do. And they would make wonderful senior centers. Excuse me, I'm sorry, a senior community or whatever we want to call it. And it's there. It's all on one floor. Both of them are. But I don't know if that has been pursued. But the gentleman who shared it at an RNN meeting was very knowledgeable. But I've not heard. Also, I meet with a whole group of people who are over 60 where I live. We meet twice a week. And that has come up over and over again. Why are these buildings, one's over 10 years and the other one's close to it? They're in perfect spots. Please don't put another condominium up. You know, they're in perfect spots. Does anybody have an answer to that? Or
Well, what we've been told at town meeting is that Walgreens was contacted, you know, their national regional office or whatever, and they said they don't want to do anything with it at this time. My response to that is, have we used our congressional people? Senator Markey, Elizabeth Warren called them up. You know, I think we might be able to get some activity, but just to take the response of, because I agree with you, Walgreens is like, you know, one level, something needs to be done.
Both of them are, yeah.
So anyway, that's
my
I mean, for about 3 hours about this. I'll give you the short answer. Lots of work, lots of outreach, lots of meetings with those property owners and the successive property owners. It's complicated. Sometimes I can go into the whole ordeal, but it's complex real estate. The town has advocated, but this is a big now international company with lots of resources and developers all the time. And we try and shape their decisions, but at the end of the day, it's their decisions. So I wish we could do more. I've said, let's do eminent domain, and people don't like that. So eminent domain is a possibility.
I'm mindful also of the time, and we got some, you know. All right, so where we're.
Can I just one more?
Yes, right, sure.
Yeah, we're not out of this pandemic either. Right, so we're doing all this planning, hoping for the future, but we have to give people hope as well too, that we're gonna come out of this pandemic as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be inclusive in the message as well too, that this is, we're talking 2015, what happened in 2015, even 2019, everything was great. But if we do the planning correctly and come up with suggestions correctly, it has to be included.
I'm hearing at least two different tracks of things. You know, on Mark's side, and it has to do with the scope of work and the next item on the agenda, which is set goals. You want to know, you want to, if you had your dream thing, I think that's part of it. What would they really like to see? I mean, everybody knows that you don't get your dream, but I also know you don't even get as much as you can unless you do dream big. So it's not, and on John's side of it, he's rightfully focusing on, all right, if our dream thing, apparently we already know from the study, and that part of it hasn't changed. The physical space, this is not going to work going forward for the future. So that's going to take some time, but we don't know exactly what we want to see in that physical space. So that's what we have to do more brainstorming on that. And then we can talk about, all right, how do we get there? And I think John Sasso, is really focusing on, all right, what do we do, the next 6 months, a year, or whatever.
No.
And I think to energize people, to give them some, the direction. Here's where we're headed. And people say, oh, okay, I'm willing to put up with something that's far less than that if I see it's getting me in that direction. So it's certainly not either or. And I'm trying to right now say with the cats. Come back to, we need to move ahead with the consultant. So it's the scope of work is the big picture. Do we have a problem with the big picture? And to me, one problem would be people would say, no, we only want to talk about seniors. We don't want to talk about the other, but that's not the charge from the select board. So I don't think we don't have that. So so I want to just suggest, can we say, is the charge sufficient as we see it as a starting point to be able to get us to hire a consultant to start doing some work on that side of things? And then once we can get that moving along, we can also be talking about what are some of the things that we would, first of all, there's going to be two things. With consultant, we're going to still be talking about big picture and things we really like, the bigger goals. But then we can also be talking about, okay, maybe we could take, even arrange the meetings by saying, for the first half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, or the second, the other way around, probably. Let's focus on, are there some concrete steps that we can take now, or people have questions about why can't we do this thing now? Or how can we help? Because one of the things that was highlighted in the report was information sharing. And there's a lot, it's clear to me as a senior living in this community, there's a lot of things I don't know and that are hidden. And there's one thing that I knew about because it just happened to something in one of my kids' high school, they give you a thing about, here's Reading High kind of thing. My youngest, so this has to go back 10 years, said that if you're a senior, and it was 60, I believe, you can get free admission to any Middlesex athletics, the Middlesex League games for basketball, and not for hockey because it's a private league, but for that and for football games.
They let you into the hockey rink too if you like hockey.
Okay, so, but who knew about that? I only saw that once.
Yeah.
I went to a game and they said, I had laminated. I actually got the card. It was difficult to get it, actually. You had to go through multiple steps to get it. So I got the card, had it laminated, and hadn't used it in a couple of years, went to use it, and then, oh no, you have to get a new one every year. This happened.
Not getting younger again.
This happened 2 months ago. So that, you know, so it's kind of like there's some information things that alone, and I think we can utilize Mystic Valley's resources. Too bad that Dan's going because he was a close friend, but I know the new person as well. So she's really good. So, but I think there are other, we can be asking the staff, how can we help them here in the interim? And the whole thing about volunteers, but volunteers want to be focused. They want to say, all right, I can do this one task. Like some people have been great in past years and ongoing as far as taxes preparation. And it used to be, I don't know if there still is, the people who would do small appliance repairs here. Is that still going on?
We do lamp repair.
Right, but does anybody know about that in the community? So I mean, right, so there's a, so,
I didn't know about the free edition.
I know.
but so there's,
That's a good thing.
there's those, right, there's those kinds of activities that, and also we can be taking a look at when we're talking about budgets, and it was in the report. I think it's a drawback that they charge for just, but I understand why they're doing it. But I think it'd be relatively short money to help subsidize. And means testing is not the way to go because it's like they learn with kids in schools. If you do means tested, that means even the kids who in poverty range are going to be too ashamed to be able to do it. You got to do it for everybody. So I think there needs to be some of the services should be set, not all of them. We're not talking about huge expenditures, but if all of a sudden, we can say within the next 6 months, there's these 2 or 3 things, whatever it is, that are, popular that people have to pay $10, $15, whatever it is, that now you can get for free. I think that people would feel, all right, that's a concrete thing. That somebody can identify.
Almost like a pilot program. This is how we're starting it off.
Yeah.
This is the direction that we're going.
Yeah.
Let's pick 2 or 3 things to look at.
And you get some buy-in that way.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. I'm
okay,
sorry.
so we get the 2 things. So I think we really need to, not going to lose sight of what John Stasho's been raising, because that's important. Because I think that helps us get more buy-in and gets people confidence that it's not going to take 10, 15 years before we can see anything. So in other words, we need to have a building or we can't do anything. So it's not that, because the building is going to take longer. And so that's very important. We don't lose sight of that aspect, that we need to give people something now or as soon as possible. Okay, so getting back, can I entertain a motion to approve the scope of work as the starting point to be able to pursue the consultant? Get a consultant. That's what I want to at least get us. We don't come out of this with the necessary vote to be able to get the consultant. Then that puts us really well behind, any kind of schedule.
Excuse me.
Mike. So I would move to accept this as a draft statement of work. Move to
As guidance for a consultant.
guidance for a consultant.
Are people counting? Are you counting, or can I can I say something?
Sure.
Okay. Quick and easy. Takes, a book, a little handbook. Doesn't take rocket science to put one together. List every service that we have now. I like what John's saying. Now. And everyone who's 60 and over, or 65, not AARP, 50, but and they get a booklet. And there it is with phone numbers and connections, okay? Very easy to do. And I'd be very happy to help with that. The other thing is that the elders don't have that long. When I was 20, I thought I'd be 20 forever, But they don't have that long. So I feel we should work within the parameters of what we have now. Even if it means renting out some space. I don't want to do another. This is exactly, I read every page of this. The same thing could be applied today. It's as relevant today as it was then. Nothing much. Work has been done, I agree. Kevin described that very well. But why
Right.
put money out for more consulting? We already know what we need.
I'm not big on consultant either, but I think the difference here is what Jean had pointed out. That's a needs assessment. We're talking about going beyond the needs assessment and what are the possibilities that we can do as far as improving the situation. But I agree. I thought the report's very well done. Lays out a lot of things that are probably, not just probably, I'm sure, are still the case. And the needs are still there.
Could I do two things?
Okay.
Yeah. Second it first.
Yeah.
And then comment. The one concern I have in the way it's presented right now, particularly at the end, a third public meeting will be a presentation of the feedback from the public forums and from the survey with summary recommendations of the select board. All good. Adding something that says, this is just the first piece of public feedback and not the blueprint for what this committee is going to recommend. I'm concerned that somebody would look at this and say, you're done. Awesome. Or the other way, which is, yuck, what happened?
I was gonna say, so this is sort of the deliverables of what the consultant is bidding on, so that's within their scope of work. Was there a price? I don't know what probably shouldn't be in a.
No, it's okay.
There's a budget.
Public, there's a budget. We have until June 30th to spend this money.
Okay.
And it's $40,000.
Which is not big dollars in terms of the hours and other things that are.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Mark, that this is just a deliverable of what this consultant is going to do, not what this
Committee
group is going to do.
Right.
And that was, I think it's important for us to understand that this is getting a needs assessment and then a plan for a plan is a multi-step process.
And this was what town meeting voted on.
Yep.
So just to be respectful, that town meeting voted on a planning study / community engagement effort. So that's.
And I have one more question. Is this sufficient from a procurement officer perspective?
I haven't gotten to that
I
part
did a
yet.
lot of procurement in the federal government, and
Yep.
they would sometimes say, "Oh, this is great," or "You're kidding me."
So this scope of work will be inserted into a template that she
They
creates.
have.
So all those other pieces of procurement will be there. It already exists.
The other
It's the scope.
26.
Yeah.
Right.
Scope.
I just wanted to.
But she could want clarification on some of the things on the scope. So this by no means is final, but as long as there's a starting point and we can run with it and the group is confident that this is the right direction, I think we can go to the next step, put it out to bid, get somebody on board here early part of next year.
So I just want to check back with Betty. Now, do you feel better after what Mark said? In other words, we're not talking, it's the same point that, John Sassel's been highlighting. We're not saying this is the be all and end all. All we're saying is we need to get this part of it going. And then we can get down to doing the work of the committee. And then this will give us some guidance, some information, because I think that's what we need. If we're not going to be able to just by sitting down by ourselves, unless we gave everybody an assignment that's going to take up a lot of time. I'm willing to do some of that stuff, but so we have that motion,
And a second.
And as amended,
No,
and is that,
was it amended?
oh, I thought you were, was that a clarification?
I'm, with the understanding of the group being what you just said,
Okay.
I'm fine leaving things as is,
Okay. All right.
So that as is the way it's drafted.
as drafted.
Any other comments before we move to a vote?
So just to say, John, I'm fine with this approach in terms of doing, I guess, as you stated, kind of a parallel approach. I think as long as we feel that the information gathered from this consultant will move us closer to the, getting some more details to support kind of the more overall goal in the longer term. I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure we also, and I think I'm hearing positive support that we will also try to look at other things we can do. And yeah, that other work I'm talking about, by the way, is going to require some roll your sleeves up type effort for us to really think about what are the options and what we can do. And, certainly there might be things that a consultant could help us with on that, but I guess at that point we'll have to circle back to see if there are things that we can get staff or other folks to help us with if we go down that path. But I'm okay with moving forward in that direction as long as there seems to be enough information in that scope of work that Gene needs to put together the RFP.
I think we'll also include some field visits to some of the different sites that exist in the state that that are doing some innovative, creative things. Yeah, I've said it now. Okay, so seeing nothing else, all in favor of moving forward with the consultant and using this, you have to do a roll call. Roll call vote. Yes. Okay, Betty.
No.
No. Okay, John Sasso.
Yes.
John Parsons.
Yes.
Ron.
Bonacini, yes.
Yes, Mike Coltman, yes.
Mark Doxer, yes.
And John O'Neill, yes. So having a majority, we will move forward with the securing the services of the consultant.
Thank you.
Now, all right, I think we should I think we already we've talked about somewhat about the goals. It's kind of like you couldn't get away from them, but we need to talk about meeting times before we leave today. And as far as the possibility of having another meeting this month, let's be, I'm certainly open, but I want to, and as long as I would say as long as we can get 5 people, that might be enough to go forward. That's one of the other things.
I would think after the holidays, after the Christmas holiday, between New Year.
So we're here after the holidays. Do I see anybody else?
After the holidays, sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can make some time, although later in that week, because we are going to be away for the first part of the holiday week. The other option I'll throw out there is, again, it depends on what other things we want to try to accomplish, but my schedule, unfortunately, in this time slot is probably the most challenging through the week for me, because I do some pickup and drop off with my son up in Beverly, kind of this time of the day. It's funny, I'm usually open from 10 to 4 every day. So for me, I can meet pretty much any time during the day. But this particular time slot is very difficult. But next week he's off. So I was going to say, if anybody had any options of potentially meeting, early next week again, if there was a value in that, I certainly am available. But if not the following week, I'm available later in the week.
All right, so I heard John Parsons said after the holidays. Betty and Ron said after the holidays. Mike,
I'm better before.
you
Next week, I have good availability. The week after that, I can't tell you yet.
do we have access to Survey Monkey?
Survey Monkey?
Yes, it's kind of like a free
Yeah.
thing. You just schedule people and
Little thing better.
yeah. So why don't we,
I can even do that.
They're free.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Yeah, I think the trick with doodle poll is getting people to respond.
Yeah.
That's what's tricky about it.
right, but with a limited number of people, it's gonna be. It shouldn't.
Do you want to just pick a date, make it really easy like we used to do in the olden days?
Okay.
Yeah, I just suggest you pick a date and time, and I mean, that's, you know, unfortunately, you know, we may not all be able to attend, but it's just scheduling's always crazy.
Want to try for, it would have to be the beginning of next.
Yeah. Betty, you had said Mondays aren't good for you, is that right?
This past month, you know, it wasn't, I have a commitment, an ongoing commitment every Monday night, but, Tuesday, whatever. But no, I'm available,
I'm pretty
you know.
next week, most anytime. Good. Into next year, I have my time commitments have suddenly changed. The daytime
And
target.
John Sasso, is next week okay with? Let's say next Tuesday,
21st?
21st,
Oh,
and time of day.
On the 21st, I'm flying to California to see my grandchildren for the first time in a long time.
yeah,
I
that's,
wouldn't want you to miss that.
I think it's a tough week, actually. You know, we have family coming in and.
How about week after?
Well, I know that,
Christmas and,
New Year's.
New Year's.
28.
the 28th.
hmm,
That'll work for me.
is John gonna be away?
I'll be
John
back
gonna-
on the 28th.
Oh, okay,
But I agree with what John Sasso said. We just have to pick some times, and if somebody can't make it, they can't make it.
that's right.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Oh.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm possible, but I agree with the philosophy is spot on. Set a date. If you got a majority of people coming, got it.
28th, but how about the time of day? Because I'm retired, I'm kind of open, except for walking the dog.
Um,
I'm at that week to work, so I can make it.
John, isn't this time not good for you? You said he's on vacation. Your child.
No, this time is good. for me,
Yeah,
but-
I'm away Monday and Tuesday, the week of the holidays. So, but again, like I said, pick a day and time for you whenever you guys want to do it, and if I can make it, I'll make it. If not, you just meet without me.
Okay.
So is Wednesday better? The 29th?
I should be back Wednesday morning, so yeah, that should be fine.
That'd be better?
Wednesday, 4:00.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear Wednesday, 4:00.
So Wednesday, the 29th.
29.
29, okay.
We got it up here. Do we want to use the same room? Same format?
Yes,
It'd be great.
I think it gives people more options, even if they're away, if they're being able to do the hybrid.
Yep, we can do that,
Okay.
depending on.
So can we just ask someone to post so that we're good for that date?
And should we consider January as well? Too? Just throw it out there, waiting a month.
Get the
All right.
second meeting scheduled.
Well, we got the January.
So in order to post the meeting, just to clarify, in order to post the meeting, the chair has to get us an agenda. And then we can post it with the town clerk. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be, generic. But she won't post it without an agenda.
Right.
She can't.
Given that, so please submit. Where can we centrally submit? I mean, they could submit it. Everybody has everybody's email, or would it be better?
Can I suggest, if it's scheduling related, that's okay, nothing else. No other materials really should
Oh,
go.
for the agenda, I'm thinking of. Where should that be?
So you get to create it, you can seek input from everybody. and
That's what I'm
it should be there.
talking about. I want.
Yeah, so only to you.
Okay,
You can't,
all right.
discussion, you can receive suggestions for
Okay, so
agenda items.
my email. JONEILL16@comcast.net. So it's JONEILL16@comcast.net.
Mark, can you send that out? I know you have the emails for everybody.
Yeah, well, I can send them to you, John, when I do that,
Okay.
and we'll do it that way. And can I just suggest no discussions to take place other than, I think we should have on the agenda,
Right.
This specific item, not a discussion to take place, just
Yep.
is an item I'd like to see on the agenda. Don't copy other people, only the chair.
Once we have an agenda, I send it to Laura?
Nope.
No.
I'll work with you, John.
Oh, okay.
Kevin.
All right.
Well, I'll put it into the format, get it to Laura.
And we need to post it no more than 48, no less than 48 hours in advance.
It's
So we'll
Monday.
do that as our Christmas gift.
Specially wrapped.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, because we're closed on Friday and, we like to get it before the weekends for the following week, so.
So we,
The
I can
21st.
try to get January. So, show me that again. Thank you.
There we go.
How about the 11th? Just tossing that out.
It's Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday. Tuesday, the 11th.
So,
Oh.
yeah, Tuesday
Thought it was,
are gonna be tough for me, usually at least twice a month.
Right.
Sounds too
How about Wednesday, the 12th?
That makes sense too soon.
Wednesday, the 12th?
So I'm gonna be a problem for you, John. My day schedules are gonna disappear starting in January.
Okay.
So, and specifically Wednesdays are in particular bad. Evenings, like 7:00ers are great. But daytimes, I'm gonna end up getting blocked out.
And I would say evenings work better for me too, because I still work.
7 o'clock.
Yes.
Works for me.
I can make that.
Okay. So that's, what did we say that?
January 11th, a little bit too early though.
Yeah, no, so instead of 3
It's 7.
And now it's gonna be the 12th,
Because I'll
right?
have to just arrange
The
things.
11th is Tuesday, and that's select board, so it has to be the 12th at 7.
Hope
Oh.
7.
January 12th.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
Monday and Tuesday nights I have calls with folks in Asia, so I'm off. So I can do Wednesdays though.
That's good.
the location question, we may want to see if we can get a building in town hall.
Because the heat is automatically turned off here. We can arrange it ahead of.
That can be adjusted.
We can fix that.
Okay,
That's not a
great.
big-
All right, so
Wednesday,
we'll
the
do
12th.
Wednesday, then 12 at 7 PM.
And we can still Zoom? Can we
Yes.
use-
Yes.
Thank you.
And so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Can I, before we, can I interrupt? Just, sorry, one more thing. I will send you some agenda. I actually just would like to, I mean, given we're going to have a really short period of time between now and any sort of reports to select board and town meeting, I'd like to ask people to think about some of these main items that we've been talking about that showed up in the report, and come up with some ideas. And I'd like to ask John if you would entertain that option for the next meeting, that we can actually take maybe one or two of these topics and brainstorm some thoughts and ideas. And I just think we need to, if we want to do this stuff in parallel, I'm, even if we just carve out a half hour in the meeting to do that, I think it would be a good process. And, we can kind of see what things we can come up with. And I think we do need to take some, I'm certainly not the one that wants to see us all do a lot of homework, but I think just doing something like that would be helpful in prep for the discussions and and be able to come up with some ideas that we can all, toss around during the meeting. We can't do it, to your point, during emails or any other options, so we really need to focus on doing it during the meeting.
Okay.
Before we get into any more discussion, could I just point out, we've been here since 4:00. There's at least 4 people on the screen that have a 6:30 meeting. So
Oh.
some of us might like a little break to,
Of course.
well,
It's 6
have something to eat or whatever. So I strongly make a motion to adjourn.
We're not obviously going to be waiting for the consultant to be on board, because they're not going to be on board for the next 2 meetings, I'm assuming. So yes, we can begin our work. So all in favor?
Mike Coltman, aye.
Aye.
You gotta do roll call. You don't have a choice. Sorry. Anytime you have a hybrid meeting, it requires a roll call vote.
Okay,
Any
we'll
vote.
vote for an adjournment. Betty,
Yes.
John Sasso,
Yes.
Bill Parsons,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes. Mike Coltman, yes.
Yes.
and John O'Neill, yes. So it's unanimous, so the meeting is adjourned until the 29th
We need to get you.
at 4:00.